Hello, good morning. It's wonderful to be in the city I love and to be talking about a subject which is so close to our hearts. Thank you, Novel Bunch, for a very generous introduction. And first things first, the co-author of India's Most Fearless, this hugely successful book on heroism in the Indian military. He was not able to come because of a professional preoccupation, and we're missing him. This is a labor of love for the both of them, and I often call them the Lakshmikant Pyarelal of contemporary Indian military journalism, and what a hugely successful series this has been. So congratulations, Rahul, and it's great to be here. So we also hear that India's Most Fearless, Part 3, one of the chapters on the clash in Galwan. The rights to this chapter have been bought by the well-known filmmaker Apoorva Lakhia for a Salman Khan starrer, which will be released later this year. So let's kick this off and tell us something about it, Rahul.
Good morning, everyone. So, firstly, it's like homecoming for me also. I'm also a product of Punjab University, and I've worked in Chandigarh for the first 5 years of my career. And absolute honor being here with all of you. So, and Vishal's been a dear friend. He was, he's a lodestar in journalism, especially defense journalism. All of us look up to his work. Okay, starting with the books, so we've got our third book is being turned into a film, and we're absolutely delighted about it because it's going to reach newer audiences. And since it's a commercial film, I see Ms. Deepthi Nawal over there, so it's a very commercial film, so which means that it'll have it's going to reach out to greater bigger audiences. Our books have already done several 100,000 copies, but I think cinema has its own appeal in terms of how the younger generation relates to it. A lot of young people don't read that much, but we're very excited about it. It's coming out either in April or in August. It's in post-production right now. And Shiv and I were the only journalists who were kind of given access to 16 Bihar, the regiment which fought in Galwan and which lost 20 people, including their commanding officer, Santosh Babu. So we've had detailed interviews with these people, with the people who actually fought there that night on the 15th of June 2000, and which was, of course, one of the bloodiest clashes in 40-50 years with the Chinese. We had the chance to visit the unit, interact with all the people, and so whatever is there is a first-hand account. What happened? How did when was the first push, the first shove, and how did it get so violent? So all that is captured in the book, and which is why these guys were very excited about and his team, and that's why the film is coming.
So tell us something more about this Bollywood interest, because I hear that Salman Khan will be playing Colonel Santosh Babu, who laid down his life so gallantly at Galwan and was awarded the Mahavir Chakra posthumously. But he's Salman Khan, and we hear that he doesn't want to die in the film. So how does that work out?
Who told you that?
Listen to all our sources.
Okay, so we also heard that bit, yeah. So, but this is not the first film which is based on our books. We've already done Amaran, which is in 5 languages. The film did a business about 400 crores and is now on Netflix. Shiva Karthikeyan and Sai Pallavi. It's been produced by Kamal Hassan and Sony Films. So that was our first film, and we've already done 2 web series, Aroor 1 and Aroor 2, and we have 2 other projects in the works. So if you see in the last couple of years, especially after Uri happened, so there's been a lot of hunger for military stories, a lot of nationalism, all those things, and just this year so many military themed films have come out.
And if I may interject here, yes, there is a hunger for military stories, particularly of raw heroism. But we've seen this year itself that some of the films on India's most epic, military battles, the Battle of Razangla, 120 Bahadur, it bombed at the box office. The other film, Ikkis, on the Battle of Basantar, the iconic young Arun Khetrapal, it doesn't seem to have done too well.
Yes, it's very.
Even the film on the great Sam Manekshaw, I mean, it barely managed to keep afloat. So, where do you think these films have slipped? Would it be in this craft of storytelling?
So, of all these films, the only one which I've seen is 120 Bahadur, which I thought was a damn nice film. The reason it didn't do well, I believe it's not even recovered its production cost, is perhaps the whole. When we look at the India-China thing, it was not really a victory for us. While Razangla is one of the most famous last stand battles, but in a way, 62 reminds us of not a victory, but if I may call it a defeat. And it was not commercialized that much. The film was not commercialized. It was a little song and dance. And I don't know, perhaps because a lot of people don't relate to those times, 62, 71, which was one of the reasons we wrote India's Most Fearless, that when we talk about New India, we thought we should also have new heroes, because you talk about Gen Z, people born in the 90s, and after that, they had very good sense of military history. I mean, people would know Vikram Batra or some people from the Kargil War. So the whole idea was, introducing them to heroes who were their age, who were fond of PlayStation, who had an iPhone, and people who they could relate to. So that was one of the reasons we wrote the books. Now, why those films didn't do well? It's really, Bollywood is a very it's a funny business, film business. Sometimes you don't know what works and what doesn't.
No, but are you also trying to say that it's more difficult to sell a story on China as compared to, say, the intense visceral rivalry with Pakistan? Is that so?
So I really feel that, because we've always been Pakistan-centric, even as writers, until this whole Eastern Ladakh standoff happened. The whole focus used to be on Pakistan, and for reasons all of us know why it makes for a great plot. And perhaps China hasn't had that kind of an appeal, popular appeal among audiences.
So, before I sort of ask you to, I'm sure that there are lots of budding authors here who would like to know about the craft of writing serial bestsellers. Blockbusters actually huge. They've sold more than 400,000 copies for their 3 parts of this book, which is a phenomenal success in this day and age for the publishing world. So, how did it all start? I mean, there were the 2 of you, and how did the idea start? What were the motivations? We've seen some great first-hand accounts of very bloody battles by military people. I can immediately recall a couple of them. Brigadier Desmond Hayes' book on the Battle of Dogra in the 1965 war. It's a very human account of an extremely bloody battle. We also remember, among so many other, General Ian Cardozo's work on the Paramveer Chakra awardees, and Brigadier Dalvi's book on the Naam Ka Chota Bakal, the Himalayan blunder, which was a story of defeat, and it was also a criticism of the politico-military leadership. So what I'm saying is, what I'm asking is, what were your motivations? How did it start?
So, of course, Vishal, both of us have covered defense for years. and we've written about a lot of these heroes. We've attended, these investor ceremonies in Rashtrapati Bhavan and other places, and we just wondered, it was just one or two paragraphs for every hero, and almost sounded like they'd done the same kind of stuff, which is not possible. I mean, everyone had their own stories.
True. I mean, we've attended any number of these investitures in Rashtrapati Bhavan, and not to sort of undermine or play down any of those incredible acts of bravery, but the citations read so much alike. मतलब हर केस में रेंगना जरूर होता है, है ना जी? वो रेंगा आगे गया.
So Shiv and I both thought that there was, we could explore these stories deeper, and he works with a TV channel, I work with a newspaper, and we didn't have that kind of liberty in our organizations to write stories, detailed stories, and we didn't know if people would, if we could sell it to our editors, and if people would be invested. So how it all started was, Shiv runs a website called LifeVest, and he'd done a little profile of an Air Force pilot, a MiG-29 pilot, whose canopy blew away, and this guy could have crashed, in a very populated area, and he was asked to eject. He didn't eject, and it was a nice 800-word piece. So I read that piece in, I think this is 2017 January, and I read it twice. So I just called him up. I said, lovely piece, and enjoyed reading it. He says, I'm thinking of making it a regular feature, doing it on my website, maybe once in 3-4 months, identify people. I said, don't be stupid, let's do a book. Let's do a book. That's where the seed came in from, and then we made a pitch to Penguin, and the next day they said, yeah, we want you to write a book. We did the first book, and within 2 months they said, let's do 3 more books. And we did the second book, and then they said, let's do 6 more books. So that's the kind of response the books have had. And initially we used to go around scouting for heroes, reading citations, meeting people, trying to, because of course we're doing 10 or 15 heroes in a book, and of course they are not the only India's most fearless. There's so many other people who perhaps would have done bigger things, but perhaps not, haven't got that recognition. So, but we would do our homework in the sense that we would want these stories to be very different. So one of the guys we've written about is a bureaucrat. He's a revenue service guy who chose to join the territorial army, and he got a Shaurya Chakra for one of the most daring operations after Uri. So he lived in Malabar Hill, was heading international taxation in Bombay, interacting, hobnobbing with these film stars, sports stars, and he decides to not only join the territorial army, but then volunteer for special forces, for para, where he did great work in terms of the money, drugs, terrorism, the whole link, and he was one of the first bureaucrats to be awarded a Shaurya Chakra, and so we thought it was a very unique kind of story.
One is a Kirti Chakra, he's also civil servant.
Of course, yeah, yes, but that's again another time. Yeah.
So Rahul and Shiv Aroor are great characters and also stalwarts of the defense beat. The books which I had an opportunity to read, and what I was catching up on this morning, they're so beautifully written. I hope you also get an opportunity to read them. I mentioned it to him that it reads like a screenplay. So tell us something about the craft. I mean, we just talked about the dull, dry military citations. What was the value you brought in, one? And tell us something about the craft, where you made it interesting, where repeatedly, so well.
So I think we were very clear. We didn't want it to be like a literary kind of work. We wanted it to be a very a very fast, racy read, something like perhaps the Commando comics, which a lot of us grew up reading. And it was not just the acts of heroism which these people did. We kind of explored different layers of the stories. And in a way, Vishal, sometimes Shiv and I say the books actually wrote themselves. The stories were so compelling that we just had to kind of put it together. And So, whether it was interacting with, the commanding officers of these heroes or their buddies or their juniors, we interacted with their parents, with their wives. So, whatever we could, while we could do about per hero about 10 to 15,000 words, but the kind of research which went into it, the kind of interviews. I think for each hero we would have written almost a book and then filtered it down to 10 or 12,000 words. So that's how we went about. So whether it is, for instance, I'll tell you about this guy, Major Mohit Sharma from the 1 Para Special Forces. So there's actually a film coming on him also. It's called Iftikhar, done by Manish Mundra. It's got a bit delayed.
Based on your
based on the second book. So he was of course his base was over here, Nahan, close to Chandigarh. So I spent about a week in Nahan with the SF guys and the people who fought with him, and tiny details like he loved holding only two things. One was his guitar and one was his Tewart R21 rifle. And how whenever he led an operation, his unit boys would say that if we are going out with Mohit sir, we know that we're going to come back. So he was that kind of a character. We reached out to his parents, his wife, his brother, and we developed such great bonds with them that when it's Mohit's birthday or it's Madhur, his brother's birthday or the anniversary, they invite me and Shiv over. They live in Ghaziabad, and we've had them over to our place several times. So it's actually gone beyond the just these heroes being our subjects. We've kind of developed personal bonds with their families, with the ones who are serving. Sadly, not all our heroes are alive. Most of them were killed in action.
I will come back to that issue later. That most of our braves they receive recognition in their death, but you give the audience here a sense of the beat you operate in. The defense establishment is famously opaque, and they have reasons for secrecy, and the media traditionally operates for exposure, and it plays for information and access, and there's always a sort of a fine tension even for the regular beat reporters. Tell us how in the midst of this culture of opacity, how did they open up to you? Was this only because you were accomplished journalists and this was a soft subject? Tell us something about it. Tell us how they opened up.
So actually, our work and our books have kind of complemented each other. So sometimes when we are not able to get access as journalists, we get some access as authors. For instance, if we'd approach the army to meet the guy who led the Uri surgical strikes, he was from 4 Para Special Forces. Perhaps as journalists, they would not have kind of opened their doors to us. But as authors, it became a very, it was a different world for them also and for us also. And also they knew that, we were not looking at kind of critiquing a kind of an operation or whatever. The whole idea was, the theme was duty, honor, courage for the book. So sometimes when we've not had access as authors, we've had access as journalists, and the other way around. You're right. You're walking a tightrope all the time, and not many times you cover this subject longer than I have. So there's a lot of filtering at your own end. Sometimes you might have documents which make for a great story, but you have to be careful. How much can you write about? By now we know what we should write, what we should not write. But if you see the times, how things are turning out these days, you have very draconian laws also which can be slapped against you if you end up writing something which should not be written about. But having covered the subject for so long, there were people who, when I started off, I knew them as majors and lieutenant colonels. They're now generals. Some of them have retired. So that kind of it's been more at a personal level rather than me being Hindustan Times or Shiv being NDTV. It's been that
so you in a sense you guys have become quasi-military. But you know, Rahul is the best jokes about it. And I mean, when you talk about the opacity of the defense establishment, the one person who immediately comes to our mind is the longest serving spokesperson of the Ministry of Defense, your dear friend Sitanshu Gar. So, do you remember his style? Do you recall something about him just to tell them how difficult it is to operate in this sphere?
See, okay, so Vishal is talking about a spokesperson who's now retired. He was the Defense Ministry spokesperson, and all of us would kind of gather in his office.
Don't filter it. Don't say
I
it how it
have
was.
to- I have to filter it. So there would be a Defense Acquisitions Council meet, or a combined commanders conference addressed by the Prime Minister, or some army commanders, Air Force commanders conferences, and this guy would somehow, because he was a spokesperson, he would be sitting there. So something you would ask him, okay, did China come up? Did this issue come up? Whatever was newsy around that time? And his responses were often very hilarious, which of course can't be narrated over here. But I mean, going beyond that, spokespersons are of course they'll give you the nice lovey-dovey stories about the good things happening in the services. But a lot of these things, a lot of the stories which I have done, I've broken some really big stories which have set the national news agenda. But those have not come in from, I would say, have not come in from the establishment per se, but people who are involved, but not directly, whether they've been in charge of affairs. I'll give you a small example. When General Bipin Rawat was the CDS, so one time I was chatting up with him. We used to meet journalists very frequently. So one Sunday I went to his house and we were talking about this whole theaterization thing happening. So he shared some ideas with me. He says, we plan to do this, we plan to do that. And then I sent him a text. I said, hey, listen, can I do a story on this? I think taking this as a theme. He says, how can you do a story? How is media supposed to know that? You'll be booked under OSA. So sometimes they tell you things in perhaps they're using you as a sounding board to kind of get inputs from you. What do you think? How would people react to it?
So my recollection of my Sitanshu Khan memory is that we were chasing a story, which is a big story. I was with television those days, with CNN, and my channel won't run the story without sort of a response from the Ministry of Defense, which the newsroom doesn't understand is almost impossible to get in those days. So I chased him for a week. The story was on hold, and I was under tremendous pressure from my office to get some kind of a response, and I was on his case, bugging him every single day. So after keeping me waiting for a week, and you picture his absolute poker face, and I will never forget his words. He had a very thick accent, and he said, I cannot confirm what you are saying, but what I will say is that what you are saying is not incorrect. So it took me a while to sort of absorb what he had said, but it was a couple of seconds, and after that I ran to Vijay Chowk and I was in touch with my newsroom. I said, run the story. So
you're right. These things happen. First, I'll narrate you a small incident. This was the 15th of June, the day the Galwan clash happened. And late at night, I got to know from someone that there had been a skirmish in Galwan Valley, and we had some casualties. So I generally alerted my office. I said something like this has happened. This was late at night. But of course, there was no way of confirming it at that time. And so the first thing I did in the morning was I called up the army headquarters and I asked them. I said, because of course, when you approach someone, if you ask them, hey, tell me what's happening, nobody's going to tell you what's happening. If they know that you are in the loop and you know something has happened, then perhaps they'll, like he said, they'll confirm or deny or whatever. So the army guy said, oh no, nothing has happened, and we'll get back to you with all that. And this was about 8, 9 in the morning. That time the Lieutenant Governor of Ladakh was a former Defense Secretary, R.T. Mathur. So I just called him up. I said, sir, I have learned that something has happened. Can you just confirm if something has happened? I'm not asking you for any more details. He said, yes, something has happened. I said, this is very serious. He says, yeah, it's serious. So that's how this whole thing, and then by evening the army guys came out with a statement that.
The first time I remember the media interface, the senior most media interface of the army actually coming on air was 15 years after the inception of this post. I think it was 2013 and I broke a story on television on the beheading of two Indian soldiers, a very unfortunate incident. I remember the names Hemaraj and Sudhakar on the line of control. And it was then, because the matter became so serious, public opinion was inflamed, relation with Pakistan came to a standstill. And it was then we could persuade, General Narasimhan was the ADGPI as they used to call at that point in time. And that was the first time he came on air. And it took them some time sort of getting used to it, because the first question he faced from the anchor, my friend Jujar Singh, who had very British staccato, he says, "General, your soldiers have been beheaded and you've carried their heads back as a trophy. What are you doing about it?" So anyway, it's a difficult area. So you mentioned, Rahul, I've been told by Hardeep that we need to wind up quickly. You told us that what made the defense establishment sort of warm up to your concept or idea was that they were sure that you would not be critical. But my question is that are we losing the relevance of critique in military writing, or generally the space for criticism, which can be a positive thing? For instance, post Kargil, it was in a response to this critiquing that the Kargil Review Committee took shape, and that eventually led to the reform of higher defense management and even the appointment of a chief of defense staff.
No, see, we do raise questions in the way things were conducted and all that. But please remember, our books are only about duty, honor, and courage and heroism. So we're not looking at kind of doing an analysis of an operation, really, right? And we get access to these units. We get access to these units, to these personnel, on the condition that our books will be cleared by MI, MO, military intelligence, military operations. So they run through our books, once we've written them. That's not to say, for instance, I'll tell you a small thing like, there was this operation in the Northeast in which this young guy, he was killed and he got a Kirti Chakra. And they didn't have time to waste, so he just ran and went straight into the operation, and he didn't have the time to put on a bulletproof vest, right? So now this was something which, again, do we mention it? Do we not mention it? Does it change the character of the story? Does it create complications for him or his family in terms of their benefits or whatever? So we've been a little. They've not asked us to change the theme or anything. For instance, even the surgical strikes we were the first guys to get access to the 4 para heroes who went into POK. That was a 20,000 word chapter, and believe me, they've asked us to perhaps change this 2 or 3 in terms of what time did we go in, just to kind of keep the other side confused and all that. So no, in terms of don't do this. There've been places where we've questioned, okay, why when we written about Air Force heroes, we've talked about the obsolescence of aircraft, why those aircraft are still there. Fine, these are heroes, but this is some heroism which we could have avoided, in the sense not lost lives and all that. So those questions that we raised, and it's not that we've not questioned or not critiqued, but I said that was not the idea behind writing the books.
So finally, we don't have too much time, Rahul. The concept of heroism, it is, as I say, that most of these stories are about people who've made the supreme sacrifice, which is actually so ennobling, and it leaves everyone so much in debt. But what I ask is that does this sort of not leave space for, say, a brilliant strategist or a military leader who may ensure the success of an operation without casualties? I mean, say the American operation in, I'm just giving an example, in Venezuela. I mean, I'm not going into the wrongs or the rights of it, but what they achieved from a military standpoint was monumental, and it was without a single casualty. So, in our country, is there space for, yeah.
I know what you're saying, Vishal, but all of us who are associated with the armed forces, writing about it, or from the armed forces. Now, even as we talk, there are like scores of operations being launched in J&K in the northeast, hundreds of operations taking place every day. So, of course, where things go awry, we have casualties, young officers dying, those things make it to the news, but there are a lot of other operations where people are sitting in the headquarters.
So it's also the story of the day. I mean, this astronaut, it was not to bring down his achievement, Group Captain Shukla. I mean, he was awarded an Ashok Chakra. And Ashok Chakra is generally awarded, it's the highest peacetime gallantry award. It is generally awarded for something, for an action in the face of what looks like certain death. I mean, if he'd gotten a PVSM, one could have, but have you been able to sort of, has anyone asked questions?
No, see,
or can we ask them anymore?
No, see, no, definitely. I mean, a lot of people have raised these questions, but there's if you remember, there's a precedent. The Wing Commander Rakesh Sharma, who was the first guy who went to space, he also went. His reserve guy Ravi Sharma got a Kirti Chakra, just like Papa Nair, who was the reserve pilot for the mission. Yeah, but of course, I think you need to be a little more selective about who you award these hardcore, these gallantry awards like Ashok Chakra.
Maybe, and when I wind up, I would say that again, it's not to bring down the level. This was Sindoor was a contactless war, and there were Air Force pilots who were awarded Veer Chakras for standoff strikes. They were well within Indian airspace and out of the strike envelope of the Pakistanis, but they were still awarded the Veer Chakra. So I suppose that this concept of bravery is something which is evolving, and may also be linked to the eventual outcome of the battles we are in.
No, I definitely agree with you that we are better off being a little more selective about giving out these awards, and like you pointed out, Sindoor, too many people got too many awards, and it was actually a non-contact kind of a thing. You were on our side. But yeah, we could be a little more selective about so that the sanctity of these awards is maintained, and you're not giving away dozens of these awards to each and everyone who's just been there.
The General Malik is there. If I can take liberty with the organizers and just take 2 more minutes. Welcome, sir. No, this is just because he's here and he led the nation in a war. When we're talking about General Narawane's book and the issues which have been raised, what is your view? I mean, say the political establishment says that he was given a free hand, but in a system where there is civilian supremacy, doesn't the general have a point that there has to be civilian accountability as well, political accountability?
So there are 2 things about that. See, General Narawane is not the first army chief who's written about Malik. General Davis has written about General Padmanabhan, General Sundar Jog, and all of them have written books. In this case, it was the whole thing was the process. He was in a position of power. Was the process followed of getting the due approval? Now, when you write a book which is covering sensitive subjects, there's a laid down procedure. And in fact, I have booked that story about how the government is now planning to introduce a rule that not just generals, marshals, and admirals, anyone who's been in a position of power cannot write a book. There has to be a cooling off period of 20 years after retirement. So I don't know how much you'll remember after 20 years of retirement and what you're going to write after that. But in his case, the whole thing was that the due process was, what we hear was not followed in terms of getting the clearances, and which is why, if you remember, the first time the book was talked about was, I think, December 2020, 2003, when he was slightly critical of Agniveer, the Agnipath scheme. And that is the time the government actually told him that you need to kind of get all these clearances. But yes, how much can you reveal? What kind of vetting has to be there? That's for the people who are sitting there.
You have a strong point, but by the end, when during the Kargil war, there were issues like when General Malik asked for offensive airstrikes, the matter was raised to the committee of the Chiefs of Staff Committee, taken to the CCS. The Prime Minister and CCS would come to the Military Operations Directorate, and they took a decision with certain caveats. So, there are several unanswered questions. Did any CCS meeting take place? And this China study group, in the statutory scheme of things, what relevance does it have? Can it supersede the Cabinet Committee on Security? There are many issues which will come up.
So a lot of people have interpreted what Naravne said, that the PM told him, "Jo uchit hai, jo uchit samjho wo karo." People are interpreting it in the ways they want to interpret it. Some people are saying, okay, that was a carte blanche to do whatever. Some people are saying, no, it did give a very clear political directive. It was firing one shot over there, could have actually led to a shooting war. But definitely, so that these instances or such lack of transparency is not there in the future, I think there should be clear-cut rules or guidelines.
Processes should be followed. They can take a wrong decision, but the process should be followed. Thank you very much. Let's hear it for Rahul Singh.
Thank you very much, sirs, for that insight and for that reminder to keep asking questions. Before we let you off the stage.